Record. All right, so let's get to the agenda. So first thing we talk about a little bit is, and we do this in the military, is prepare to copy. And if you ever say that around Army folks or whatever, everybody just grabs their pen and their paper. And I just encourage you to go through this. And the idea is that it's not just informational, but it's actually trying to give you tips, tricks that you can use with your team, with your business, whatever it is. So please borrow. I normally just say steal, but I try to make it nicer when I say, sounds nicer when I say borrow instead of steal. But please, that's the whole purpose of this is to borrow. And what are other people doing? Write it down. Like, hey, that's a great idea. I need to start doing that. So please do that. Then we've got Leandris, who's going to do an introduction. I'll give a little bit of an overview on processes, because what Stuart will talk about is TQM and ISO 9000, which is not lean, which is kind of a little bit the undertow of this, is that processes are very similar, and you'll see that. Stuart will give his presentation. We'll talk about some certifications with Leandris. Actually, I think tips and tricks comes first, and then certifications, and then we'll leave it for questions and next steps. Does that sound good to everybody? And you'll see I've got my process ref jersey on here, so I'll try to keep control of the horses here. So with that, Leandris, would you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about people matter more than tools?
Yeah, I can do that, Joe. Appreciate it. Yeah, my name is Leandris Whedon. I'm in Nashville. That's kind of how I met Joel. We actually met through some LinkedIn networking, and we were talking through some things. And one of the things we landed on was people matter more than tools. You hear a lot of process, a lot of tools being talked about, but at the end of the day, what we came up with is that the people that are doing the work matter more than the tools that are being discussed. So that was a overarching thing that we came up with here not too long ago, and I'm gonna go ahead and pass it back to Mr. Joel there.
All right, yeah, thanks. Leandris, would you give a little bit about your background? Um, where what have you done when it comes to what have you done for us lately when it comes to lean, Leandris?
I guess my background, I'm in the design and construction industry, general building, specifically more on the healthcare side of things. I've always worked for a CM at Risk general contractor throughout my 19-year career in the industry. Got involved with, I would say, lean construction maybe back in 2014, and have since been trying to see how we apply these things from other industries to the design and construction industry. So did the CM Lean and did some certifications through the LCI, which we'll talk about here a little later on. But that's kind of where I've been with lean and construction. So really just on a journey of continuous improvement and trying to continue to be a lifelong learner and see how we can apply things from other industries to design and construction, such as lean.
He won't say he's an expert. He'll say he's a practitioner, but he's got some pretty good background on the whole deal. So with that, I'll go through a little bit of set Stuart up on what he's saying. I think most of us on here speak lean a little bit. I probably don't speak as well as most of the folks here, but just to go back where a lot of this comes from is Deming. And you see Plan, Do, Check, Act, it's over there. And then you've got Plan, Do, Study, Act. And the difference here is actually interesting, which again is a little bit of the theme here of getting wrapped up in the semantics of the process. It can be a pretty good detriment if you forget this is really about empowering people. But I found it interesting that Deming, you can go onto his website, and there's an article that really goes after the difference between study and check. And I think a lot of us wouldn't know which one goes with Deming, but his word is study instead of check, because you're actually trying to learn and not just check, and you jump up and down on it. So it's PDSA and not PDCA, and so I think we can get caught up in a lot of that, what the words are, and that it's interesting to me that I feel like Deming got caught up in that. And then you kind of look over here on lean, very similar. You got the circle, and there's 5 lean principles. I think that's primarily for lean. Lean construction has adapted a little bit, which is totally fine, of course. On the website, they address that there's actually 6 steps for lean construction versus 5 that may be more in the other, like let's say manufacturing industry. And then you've got TQM. So Deming ties to total quality management. Stuart used TQM at Marriott. He'll talk about that. If you look at those words and what's on there, you can see that those are all very similar. And then you go to ISO 9000, which is the, you got 9000, 9001. You can learn a little bit. There's differences there. I've heard arguments about the 9000, 9001, so you can do all that stuff. And you see the Plan Do Check Act that's inside of there. Of course, Deming had Plan Do Study Act. So that's how those processes are all explained, but they're all very similar. And I just wanted to point that out for when Stuart, which is going to talk right now a little bit about TQM and ISO 9000 and what he did for those teams that he was involved in. Key takeaways, the processes are just tools. They lay the groundwork for communication, stealing a little bit of Stuart's thunder there. And something that I talk about is and Stuart will too, is focus on the agreement and understanding so you can communicate, not the actual semantics of it. If you're getting in tips over what the semantics are, you probably lost the focus of what this is really all about. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Stuart. And Stuart, if you would please introduce yourself and take it from here.
Sure, thanks, Joel. Appreciate it. Good to be with everybody. My name's Stuart Raleigh, as Joel mentioned, and I've had 24 years in HR. My career has spanned partly that. I've also been an operations guy and have done systems development work and a bunch of different things. So I've had kind of a broad career, but one of the things that I have spent most of my time with, and particularly as it relates to this topic, was when I was with Marriott Corporation a number of years ago, first job out of college. And eventually then when I came to work for Lee Company here in Nashville, or Franklin specifically, is that I took our responsibility for our safety initiatives within the organization. And so all of those pieces in conjunction with our large construction projects really drove who we were as an organization and really drove a kind of about what we wanted to be and how we wanted to create quality within each of those organizations. And so I'm going to bring a little bit of the nuggets that I took out of our time when I was with Marriott when we first started this. And much of what we did came as a result of the book many of you have probably heard, In Search of Excellence. And that book, published by Tom Peters, was a book that kind of really took industry by storm. And a lot of people began to look at what does quality look like and what does excellence look like within the organizations. And we were no different. And Marriott, being a pretty large company at that point, we had 100,000 employees in the hotel division, which is where I worked. And one of the things that we realized and recognized that we need to do is that we wanted to begin to adopt that. We were a pretty process-driven organization. We had SOP, standard operating procedures, for everything. So every manager in the organization had a complete set of SOPs that they had to abide by for doing every part of their job. So whether it was housekeeping or food and beverage or the front office or reservations, everybody had an SOP that they had to abide by. And so when the TQM started, as well as when In Search of Excellence got published, our leadership decided, we've got to grow, we've got to expand. We can't just make it about following procedures because not everybody is the same, not every hotel is the same, and everybody needs the ability to be able to do their job really well. And so that basically led us to a weekend together where all of the senior leadership of Marriott at that time, the hotel division, all came together and began to work on a process of what we were going to do to drive out to the hotels and make a difference. And that's when we adopted the total quality management methodology. But the thing that I would say, in my experience, was the greatest takeaway that came from that, and even more so with the ISO work that we did at Lee Company, was the fact that it didn't make any difference what system you use. I mean, this is my experience. It really didn't make any difference what system you use. what each system did, whether it's TQM or ISO or Lean, is that it provides a common language for everybody to understand and be able to describe the situation. So, and also with that, not only describe the situation, but then prescribe a response to that situation. But all of that, which we learned, or I learned by rolling out our total quality management program at Marriott, all of that depended on the people. Because if you didn't empower the people to take care who are serving the guests, if you didn't empower them to take care of the guests, then it didn't make a difference how good your system was. You weren't going to have, your guests weren't going to be satisfied. And that was going to impact the quality of what we did as an organization. So when we designed the process that we were going to roll out to all 100,000 employees that worked for the hotel division at that time, it boiled down to just one simple thing, is that we needed to create the boundaries of empowerment so that everybody within the organization knew what they could do in order to satisfy the needs of a particular client or customer. And at the same time, also knew what they needed to be aware of around them and around the hotel and the property that they needed, and who they needed to communicate with in the event that anything was out of sorts. So if there was an issue with a wet floor, or anything having to do with, a guest was upset about how they got charged for the movies that were in their room. I'm sure each one of you have been to a hotel and got charged for a movie that you didn't really watch. And so that became the issue of, how do we resolve that? How do we do that? How do we create an opportunity in an environment where people can respond? And that was really what our total quality management and our empowerment movement was all about, was giving those frontline employees the ability to be able to report, as well as the ability to be able to serve the customers and the people that they had to work with the best. And so from that, when I then went to Lee Company and we started the same ISO process, particularly within our large construction group, the same reality presented itself there, is that each employee, whether they were an electrician or whether they were a plumber, or whether they were doing part of the construction, they all had a responsibility to everybody on the site, not just the people that were Lee Company employees, but all of the other workers and all the other trades that were on that site, to make sure that they worked in both a safe environment, as well as they knew what their boundaries were and what they could do in order to make sure that they reported what it was that was either out of sorts with what the process needed to be, or if there was any particular safety issue. So that same logic, that same understanding that I received while I was working at Marriott presented itself perfectly within the ISO work that we did within our large construction group, and being able to train and help our trades, our employees understand what it is that they could do, and to understand the process for making sure that they elevated that if it needed to be elevated, or that they took care of it if it was something that they had the ability to take care of, that they took care of it, that they were empowered to do that. And at the same time, their job was also to report and to make sure that we did whatever we could do to improve and to avoid that in the future. So when you take that whole piece together, take all of those together, those are the things that began to become really clear to me when we began to look at what does quality mean, what does the process mean. It came down to making sure that every one of our employees were empowered to know exactly what they could do and how they needed to escalate. If something needed to be escalated, that they had the ability to be able to do that, how they would go about doing that, and creating a common language for us to be able to operate together, so that when somebody said something, everybody else on the team knew exactly what they meant. So that's a lot of what we did, and that's a lot of what I got to be a part of and to look at. And so as it relates to our topic here today, those to me become the great takeaways, that you're no better than the people that you're empowering to do the jobs that you've got to do there. So Joel, that's what I've got. If anybody's got any questions or any other thoughts, feel free.
Yeah, are there any questions out there? I know I've got one I want you to expand on, but get it out there for the group.
I got
Sure.
a question, Stuart. Thanks for the presentation. Can you talk a little bit about the systems you had? So variability, flexibility, making sure that we don't curtail innovation. I do agree that the the people are the most important in the system. How did you guys ensure that there was innovation? Did you allow like feedback from your systems, or what are some of the techniques maybe you used so that in some cases when we give real prescriptive checklists and everything to people, sometimes we curtail innovation to make things better? But I'm just curious how you manage that.
Yeah, that great question. One of the things that we began to do, particularly at Lee Company, is that we would make time on the floor. So whoever was doing it, so whether it was the superintendent that was for the entire site, or whether it was one of the supervisors for one of the trade groups, whether it be plumbing or electrical or HVAC, they would meet with their teams and they would purposefully at the end of the week or towards the end of the week, usually it was Thursday more often than it was Friday, but they'd basically have a huddle in the first part of the morning and say, what have you learned this week? What's something that we didn't do or that we could have done better had we thought about it before? And so it created an opportunity for all of the folks on the team to be able to sit down with that supervisor and them to provide an environment for them to give them feedback. And so out of that came a number of suggestions, from anything to how cores were run, to when we actually started running ductwork and who we used to be able to do that ductwork. So it was one of those things that each one of the employees was given, in essence, a mandate to say, not only is there a process, not only do you have blueprints you've got to follow in a system that we have in place, but your job is also to be aware of things that you see that we have opportunities to become more effective with. And so that was one of the main ways that we actually used, is that on site, we would actually have opportunities for those employees to sit down with their supervisor, and the supervisor, then we worked with them to give them an effective way to actually solicit that input. A lot of them weren't good at it. A lot of them had spent their whole life just listening to orders and going and doing what they had to do. And so we had to work with them to get them to understand that, hey, asking a question is okay, or somebody having a different opinion than yours is okay, and making sure that they knew that. So that was part of the training that we used for those supervisors when it came down to actually being able to do the on-site work.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a question for Stuart? Stuart, I was going to actually ask about that third bullet point there of that frontline leader, who is a lot of times is the one that's been dependable. They don't really get promoted based on leadership skills or get trained on leadership skills. But you just addressed it. What training did you get? How much time did they have? Did you get pushback? Anytime you're training and you're taking somebody out of ops, like that's a cost. I feel like that's kind of a big hurdle to overcome. What'd you see there?
Yeah. So to be honest with you, it flows from the top. So our president and CEO, when it came down to it, I had to go in his office and say, hey, are you committed to this? And he absolutely was committed from a quality standpoint to make sure, and from a safety standpoint, probably more than anything, to make sure that not only did we meet our deadlines, but also recognizing that if we didn't take the time, then chances are there's going to be a lot of rework, or there are going to be things that we had to go back and redo simply because we didn't do them right the first time. We didn't take enough time to be able to look at it. So to rush through a project just to meet a deadline meeting the deadline was important. And I don't want to say that wasn't a big deal, but the idea that we couldn't take time to actually go back and look at our process to make sure it was effective, that we did the best that we could do, that was one of the things, that was probably the hardest thing to communicate, particularly since most of our superintendents were of the ilk and had grown up and lived in a world where they just got an order and they went and did it. And it was always about deadline. It was always about deadline. And so to be able to actually go back with them and make sure that the senior leadership and then the EVP that was responsible for our large construction group, he was totally on board, particularly since it was his idea to begin the ISO 9000 process. And so he was absolutely committed to making sure that all of the team members did it. So at the end of the day, the short answer is it really came as a result of making sure that leadership was completely committed to it. And out of that, then the rest of it flows downhill from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any Ken Bounds, you got anything to say? See ya.
Well, I was just thinking of something. We recently enrolled some of our supervisors into a leadership program. And it was interesting, it's like an 8 or 10 segment program. And the first thing that they went over in session 1 was almost personality profile of each of the leaders. And when that third bullet point, like you said, people will do things differently than you do, and that's okay. It was real interesting. The feedback we got back was how they learned about each other and each other's behaviors, how they, communicate, what their natural tendencies are. So I thought that, Stuart, was there anything in some of the things that you did at Marriott or at Lee that implemented some of those things so they understood how each other behave?
Great question, Ken. We did at Marriott. We were big believers in Myers-Briggs, and so there were a number of people. I mean, we did that religiously with just about every new manager. So the managers themselves understood kind of that process, and then to the degree to which they were comfortable with it, they would then begin to implement it with their people. So they did do some of it. I would say it was probably more at the leadership level than it was necessarily at the rank and file level. And within Lee Company, that was one of the other initiatives that that when I first came there was one of the pieces to make sure that we understood how we worked as a team, as a senior team, but then also how those teams from each side down understood each other. We didn't, though, and I would say this is probably a miss on our part back then. We didn't really drive it down to the individual contributor level. The technicians and the folks that were in the midst of that, and that probably would have been, to your point, would have been a great opportunity to be able to help them understand, because there's a lot of resentment if somebody doesn't do it the way you do it, and you think, gosh, they're stupid, or they're just not thinking about what they're doing, and they look at the problem differently than you do. And part of it is making sure that the supervisors and the superintendents understood that there is going to be discrepancy. But I think one of the things we missed was an opportunity to actually drive it down even further into the organization.
Thank you. Same here.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, thank you. I appreciate it. And this is wide open. So if anybody's got any questions or comments or whatever as we move forward, please feel free to come online. So with that, we'll do tips and tricks, and I think it ties a lot to what we've been talking about. Joe, this is you. You got the second one there. Machuta's done a lot with Lean, and Brian Mola has been a part of this for 2 years. The two Brians and a lot of folks on here. So Brian, can you tell everybody about Good Catch? I like this from a culture perspective.
Sure. I'm Brian Mola, Senior Project Manager with Machuta Construction. Joel asked me to talk a little bit about our Good Catch, which I think most of us in the industry probably do. But for us, the Good Catch was a change of culture, moving from a just blame culture where we're blaming the individual for things that are going on to a just cause, so that we get to the cause of what things are going on, and reporting that in a safe and helpful manner so that we can get that information out without people feeling that there's going to be repercussions or somebody's keeping track of what they're doing and going to rat them out for something. So we have a proprietary software program we created called Machuta Mobile, which does a variety of things for us as far as safety, as far as checking in when we're working on a job site. It provides us an ability to do huddles, to say where people are going to be within a job site, make sure they have the proper authorizations and credentials to be in certain areas. But we also use that to track any types of incidents that we have. And it's a pretty robust system where the first time something happens, we've got to be within an hour posting what that incident may be. It's automatically set up to email that out to everybody that's associated with that job and our safety committee. And then we have 24 hours then to go back into that incident and fill out more information, any type of doctor reports or anything like that that's going on. But our emphasis is on the good catch portion of that. And so the first page is just very generic. You know, where did it happen? What time did it happen? Give a brief title and give a quick description of what's going on, and that's it. Nobody's names are in there or anything like that. And we can just highlight things that we may see. We may see a cord that's plugged in that's a tripping hazard. Maybe we can try to trace that back to a specific company or a specific person, but the idea is let's just get the job site safe. And so by posting that, saying, hey, we caught this, this extension cord in the way, we've unplugged it, moved it out of the way. We got to look at it and see what the best way is to route that later. We can do that. And we can just fill that out quickly. And that's as far as it goes for our good catch. It goes out in the email, doesn't have anybody in specific that we're going to blame for that. And we can just track the different things that we have. All that information goes back to our safety committee, which I believe meets every 2 weeks or once a month at minimum, and reviews all the good catches, and then can see if there's a trend that's going on. You know, maybe we have a lot of ladder incidents. And so then that helps us formulate what our plan is to get better huddles out, get better toolbox talks out to address those concerns and see if there's something more specific that we need to get into and solve those problems. What we've seen through our lean journey is the more good catches you have, the more your actual incidents and accidents go down considerably.
Nice, Brian. Did you say this? But I think you're trying to not be able to. You can't break for the day until you have a good catch. Is that
Yeah, that's actually something we've just started implementing. We're not quite there yet, but we have a huddle that we can open at each job site, and we're going to start implementing that. We've kind of rolled that out in the last couple of months to get people into that mindset. Is, you know, the ask was, as you're walking job sites, do this, but now we want to be more deliberate. And before we can close that huddle each day, everybody should be able to find at least one thing that's a good catch on a job site. And so we're working on the software behind the scenes to be able to actually implement that so that somebody can't close a huddle until they put their good catch in for the day. But that's just, again, it's the culture we're working on. It's shifting quite a bit, that safety culture, to get to that point. But that is something that we're aiming to do and striving for.
I like it. I thought that was great. Thank you. Mr. Machuda, you guys using an A3 in the office?
Yes, we have.
This is for lean construction. You're not supposed to use an A3 for something besides construction.
Well, actually, we started with A3s and lean that had nothing. It was all our office and safety. So what I found from the most recent journey is, you know, we emphasize the people and the tools, just like Machuda Mobile. You know, the software was in place, the logic made sense. And the software and the forms and everything kind of forced everybody to conform to a way of doing things, but it took probably a year and a half for the culture to catch up to the software, you know what I mean? And as far as A3s go, we're going through one right now and kind of A3 reboot 2.0, whatever you want to call it, of dealing with some thorny issues, especially when there's culpability across the board. And so I'm a firm believer in, you know, focus on the problem and not the people. And what we found through Machuda Mobile is usually when there are safety incidents, it's not an employee's fault as much as the process isn't defined or you haven't adequately trained people or informed them. But this latest one we're working on, and it's been rough, but we're 6 meetings in with a large group of people. They're all A-type personalities and they all want to just skip to the end. And I would caution that if you don't spend the time doing the root cause analysis, and they say the 5 whys, I think we're on 25 whys to really get to it. So we're still not done. And it's been a struggle to keep everybody on task to get to the solution in a constructive way. But it's been a good experience. So A3s are great, but you have to spend a lot of time on defining the problem before you jump to solutions, because usually you're solving for the wrong issue if you don't really dig deep enough. So that's kind of my little caveat on A3s.
Yep, I like it. I like it. Thank you. I think you're right. It's wise words there of slowing down so you can get the problem right before you start getting into solutions, or you're just solving the wrong problem. So it takes some patience on that, doesn't it? Before you start jumping squares.
Yes.
Do you have somebody as a process ref myself in this meeting? Do you have somebody that protects the process, or how does that, like I like to say the extroverts take over meetings during the meeting, the introverts undermine it afterwards. Do you have somebody protecting the A3, or how's that work? How's that go?
In this particular instance, it's me. I'm kind of the quarterback. And we kind of posted, here's the rules of engagement for this and other meetings where there may be contentious issues brought up. And so at the beginning of every meeting, I remind everybody about the rules of engagement. And it's simple stuff like, you know, phones down, be on time, be an active participant and listener, don't cut people off. But the other one is you're not allowed to assess blame to somebody else unless you're willing to offer something up first. Meaning, all right, I screwed up, I did this, but, or and it's amazing how that one little statement changes the dynamic of the meeting where people aren't so quick to point a finger unless they look inside first to say, maybe what could I have done better?
Yeah.
So for now, it's me.
Nice. Yeah. And I like the culture there. Just setting up yourself of, it's okay to be wrong. That's not the purpose of what we're trying to do. So,
Yeah.
All right. The next one, I've got one out here. I'm gonna pull up this guy over here. You gotta lean in. That's Stephen Hall right there. He and I have been working this along with Leandris actually. And this has been trying to tie into, I can't remember who just said it, and I apologize, but trying to link the apprentice to lean. So, I think a lot of times we get it. I relate it to the military. I have to translate everything into the military and then back again. But at higher levels, like General Kaska's level, like he says words that are not known by 20-year-old Private Joe Snuffy, but Joe still needs to know what to do to help this whole process because it all is connected. And what we've kind of come up with, so I saw the 5S, and that's the lean side that you all have seen. If you haven't, it's on lean construction. So it's just really about getting organized on that front line. And then we talk about see something, say something. So there's 5S, and I said see something, say something. Well, that's 4 S's, and then so we needed a 3, and Stephen talks about it. He and I have done some work together on schools and some other stuff, but he'll talk about like you got to show up and your appearance matters. So that sleep, shower, and show up ready, that became the 3S. And the idea behind this is that you're linking this lean concept to the front line and speaking words that they will understand. And I just wanted to share that with you. That he and I and some others are working on. There's that, and then Brian Mullen and I have talked about this. And General Kaska, feel free to jump in on this because I know you've been all this, but this to me comes from we call them pre-combat checks and pre-combat inspections, but trying to set the stage for like, does everybody on the same page? So I feel like collaboration, we talk about it a little bit, but does it really get the attention it deserves at the beginning of a meeting? And this is just a little questionnaire that kind of tries to set the stage for the team that we do collaborate here. We do work together. Brian Mullen, if you want to jump in and tell everybody else what you think about this. Does it have potential for future work with you?
Yeah, I was saying we do safety pre-install meetings prior to the work starting with when new contractors are showing up for the project, as well as quality start meetings, that these questions would be good to sort of open the door to sort of set the conversation for, expectations going in the job with the foreman or whoever's in charge of the work. You know, listening all this, and these questions are sort of good openers for that, is that you want to set the expectation, but then also leave space in the process for people to speak up. So, you know, we sort of ask these questions, get those conversations going, and then we kind of show up at the job with huddles in the morning, you know, leaving opportunities for contractor A to be able to speak to contractor B in a safe setting, and then support those processes. So I think these questions are something we're going to look at implementing into our job start, both in safety and quality meetings, as an opener to be able to know what we're trying to promote on the job, and that's getting people talking to people.
Nice. Thank you. Appreciate that.
If I could add one thing there too. One thing that I've seen that's been a great tool that some of our construction teammates use pretty effectively. I've been pretty impressed by it. It's when we have a critical infrastructure shutdown that impacts a lot of critical areas in the hospital, both patient care and potentially loss of life if not done correctly. But methods of performance, and some people call it their pre-work plan, but methods of performance really give everyone a clear understanding of what is being done and what the process of that is going to entail. And then everyone can kind of visualize it from their angle. Myself as the owner, the other contractors that may not be physically doing the shutdown, but maybe have a second and third order impact to the shutdown. And then our nurses and our clinical leadership from how different actions or performance measures that are going to occur during this may also affect them. So, you know, some of our teams are really good at this, and it kind of mirrors some items that I've seen in the military as we do, like you said, pre-combat checklists and that. But that's what pops into my mind is the method of performance process. And I think we've been through that a lot, Ken, with I feel like on the electrical shutdowns, more than anything, we really get deep into it, and we have to, because we got to get it right. So,
Well, Jim, that's a great comment, because when we're going to shut off power or affect the power in a hospital, it can be very it's very critical, obviously, to the patients that are being served. So when we develop, we call it a method of procedure, but a method of process, it brings all of the constituents together. So we map out step by step what would be turned off, when it would be turned back on, what interim measures would be put in place, whether it's temporary to a certain area. But we have to, there's really a lot of time and effort by the frontline electricians and foremen to identify those areas, work with, like Jim's team and facilities, and with the nursing units of what's critical. Nursing units, or it could be ORs, could be ICUs. And it's an interesting dynamic when everybody does get together. They understand exactly what's going to happen and have input into the effect of that. That was a great point, Jim. But we see that often. It's nice when it's planned too.
Yeah, we gotta put you in the hot seat. I hope you got an answer. How do you train the frontline worker when they see something, to what their process is to get that information up to, let's say, you or whoever it happens to be? What do you rehearse that before, or how does that work so that that apprentice knows what to do when they see something that's not right?
Me?
Yeah, if you got it. I say I'm putting you on the
Okay.
spot here. I hope I'm not doing it.
you know, they kind of learn it through their supervisors and through just experience and training. That's the behavior, you know, to move it up the chain quickly. You know, if they see something, they bring it up to their supervisor, ask questions. Some of that's the supervisor training apprentices.
Got it.
You know, there's
I catch that in the schools.
you know, the systems in place, you know, follow that. If it's depending on the level of call it urgency to the matter, is the different instances we attack differently. You know, if it's an emergency situation, I hate to say as simple as we got a group text going between our superintendent, foreman, project manager, and everybody, and so that everybody is aligned to kind of immediately attack the problem. Obviously, other things that this was important, we got to elevate it. We have, you know, the like every others have daily huddles, kind of like Joe and Brian have. You know, they have their daily that, you know, kind of formally reports it up. So we have that as well that notifies, say, the project team of an area of improvement, whether, you know, for safety or
It's all good.
operations.
Yep, that's what this is all about. This is all
So-
about. Thank you. I
Hey,
appreciate it.
if I could add a couple things, and
course.
I don't have apprentices, but just having been in some different positions where maybe this was important. So I think the first thing is expectations. It's unacceptable for someone, no matter how junior you are, to see something unsafe or something and not speak up. So I think you have to make that the expectation that, you know, not saying something is wrong and has accountability actions with it. And then I think it goes with empowering people. I mean, the more we can empower our junior leaders, the better culture, the better programs that we will develop, not only in our job sites, but in all aspects. So I think when you said that, I think of expectations. It's your duty or it's your responsibility to speak up. Full empowerment of people, make them feel important on the team and want to say something and want the best outcome for the team. And then it's really all about culture. You know, if you have a culture in your organization where people can't speak up or feel like they're not going to be heard or not going to speak up, then it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to have those outcomes.
Great point.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. And then anything, any other tips or tricks out there? And it would see if Julia, you're pretty smart on this. You got a whole bunch of folks on here. Are you still out there?
I'm here. I crashed your meeting by inviting a bunch of folks. So we are on kind of our 2.0 of lean delivery training within our organization. And I think I saw Stephanie was on here. Stephanie, and then there's another gentleman by the name of Eric. He's been helping us lead the charge. And one of the things that we did last week was there's a community of practice similar to this of sharing ideas, what's working, what's not. We all signed up for LCI and then took an assessment as to where we were, you know, on our lean journey and style. So this is really helpful, I think, leaning, you know, from other best practices and organizations. I took down a lot of notes. I think one of the struggles that we have is the North Star continues to move, you know, so the systems that fall in place to support the North Star then get questioned. And then what essentially happens is the burnout piece. So having more clarity as we roll out information and communicate to others is key. So this was very helpful for me. Hopefully it was for the rest of the team that joined as well.
Good. That's great to hear. And you did not, this is your meeting. I'm just the ref. That's all. I'm just. All right. So, and that goes into some of these other things that, the certifications overview. So we talked about this of, well, General Kakaska brought it up of like, if you're an accountant, you got the CFA and, but what is there out here? So Leandris is going to go over this a little bit of, the certifications that are out there and kind of how they apply real quick. So Leandris.
Yep, I
All
got
right.
that, Joe. You got 3 listed here. AGC CM Lean, which is through the Associated General Contractors of America. They have a certification course out there that they offer for a certificate of construction management focused around lean. Used to be 7, it's changed to 5 as of the beginning of this year. Anybody, I would say, it would be good to take it. It gives you a pretty solid basis of lean as it relates to construction and what people in the design and construction industry do. Project manager, superintendent, foreman, frontline workers, all the way up through executives. It's probably recommended to take if you're interested in that. Similar to that, LCI Lean Construction Institute has a CPC, Certified Practitioner of Construction, and they also now have I believe the designation is CDC, Certified Designer of Construction, but 2 similar certificates. The difference there is it's more so you take an exam to see what you know related to lean as it is design and construction, then you put together a portfolio, submit it to some people over at LCI that review it, and they put their stamp on it and say, okay, you now have this designation to show that you not only have the lean knowledge, but you have the wisdom and understanding, and you have applied it at some point in your career. ASHI CHC, Certified Healthcare and Construction, is more healthcare focused for people that work in the healthcare industry as it relates to design and construction. They also have some other certificates that are available as well, but a lot of folks that have a healthcare focus and they build inside of hospitals, medical office buildings, emergency departments, vertical expansions at existing facilities, all those things that ASHI CHC can be of use to you. Those are 3 of some of the ones that are out there. The first 2 are more lean specific focus, and that last one there is more healthcare focus.
Thank you. I'll throw it, Stacy, you got anything you want to add, Tom?
No, he did a very good job explaining it. I did put in the chat a link to the AGC CM Lean page. It has all of the options for the virtual training. If anybody is interested in in-seat, our chapter can easily organize that. We would just need, at least 6 people. So you can find more information there or contact me. Thanks.
All right, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. And Leandris, you were the first LCI CPC, is that correct?
Yeah, I just got lucky with that one, Joe. So got my paperwork in first. But yeah, I was the first person to receive.
I'm gonna keep trying to brag
designation
on
from
you, man, whether
LCI.
you like it or not. All right. And then it wraps it up.